So, listeners, there's something you should know. I am Lou's father's, brother's, cousin's, nephew's former roommate, which means absolutely nothing.
It's time to take an inside look at those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we have a double feature. One is a marketing expert helping brands that are really sucking at creating fun experiences online at scale to get them to engage better. The other helps business leaders that are successful, stuck, and ready to think bigger to get them to think really, really big and get them unstuck. It's a sibling happening here on Thrive Loud today as I bring you Jon and Jeff Dwoskin. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Hey, Lou.
Hey, what's going on, Lou? Hey,
the first "Hey Lou" was Jon, and the other one was Jeff. And
yes,
I've just learned. I'll give some background to speed things up. Jeff is slightly older, 20 months older than Jon. They're coming to us from suburban Detroit, which they've just learned my in-laws summer there, and they're all very confused. And on top of that, they're two pretty prolific podcasters and communicators and marketers and business leaders. And so obviously they're very competitive in their entrepreneurial way. I can only imagine what Thanksgiving is like. So first of all, welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, Lou. Appreciate you having us.
Good to be here, Lou.
All right. So let's dive in a little here. I'm going to start with Jeff because we've had Jon on the show a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Jeff, you've got a pretty cool business. Can you give a little 411 onto the work that you do so our listeners can kind of say, okay, now I know what that guy does?
Absolutely. So the name of the business is #Stampede. It's a cross-platform technology that allows brands to engage and then automatically communicate with the people they're engaging with on social media and then drive those folks to, say, a microsite. The importance of that right now is with the importance of first-party data because of the cookies going away. It's important to capture those email addresses and such. So you need kind of clever ways to do that. So for example, like here, you could say, oh, hey, everyone go on Twitter right now and type in hashtag, I'm blanking, hashtag Lou Diamond and then @Lou Diamond and, at your Twitter account. And I'll send you all the information you need to sign up for my mailing list. They go on Twitter, they just sign that up. And then maybe also go and tell me what you love about the show or who you'd like to see on the show, something that kind of drive them to do it. And they go and do that. And then they get an automatic tweet from you because they've done a call to action on Twitter. And that can be like, hey, thanks for listening, follow this link. And that link takes them to a place where you can ask them a few marketing questions. They can opt in, to your mailing list, all that kind of good stuff. And then you can take them somewhere else too. So if you're pitching a book, you can then take them to a place where they can buy your book or download your book or a white paper or a QR code.
Automating the way that social media can route you to where you need to get to. More or less.
And then works on Instagram and all that kind of stuff too. So and Reddit.
Just for the record, I keep getting on Instagram. All it took was me one time to look at one of those head shaving things, and that's all they want to keep sending me now is something to buzz my head and keep my very tight hairline as tight as it can be.
Yeah.
So helping people in marketing is where Jeff plays in. Jon, bring people up to speed. Where do you help people?
Yeah. So well, thanks again, Lou, for having both of us on the show. It's fun for Jeff and I to be together. I work with successful people who are stuck in business and want to get unstuck. I work with solopreneurs to Fortune 100 companies and everything in between, C-level execs, owners of companies, managers, salespeople are typically my clientele. And in businesses I work with, sometimes one of those and sometimes, a collection, if not all of those different types of people. And my goal really is to help people grow their business on a consistent basis. My ideal client is somebody where we do kind of anywhere between a 2 to 5 hour deep dive, and then we do 15 to 30 minutes a week to keep them consistent. I can type. Our dad told me in high school to pay attention in typing. And so, because it would be really useful in my life, so I can type as fast as I can talk. So I record my Zoom calls for my clients if they want it, but I take notes always. And so I can map out everything we talked about, all the action steps and everything. And so they become kind of, used to these weekly calls, and then they don't even have to take notes because I send it all to them. Everything's in writing, which is another way to keep them accountable and consistent in what they need to do.
So let's go to this. You both are entrepreneurs, smaller type businesses. Jeff, your company, very small group of people. Jon, call it, you have a practice, solopreneur or entrepreneur, however you look at it. Bring this one generation back up. Well, what did your parents do?
Our dad was a dentist, and our mom was just a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah,
and
we grew up on the mean streets of West Bloomfield, son of a dentist.
No, we grew up in Farmington.
First with a perfect smile. It's been a rough life, Lou. I don't know.
Well, I always, this is actually interesting because like my dad was an entrepreneur and he had his own businesses. So that was something that I was always akin to. Neither one of you felt the need to entering the field of dentistry?
I actually did feel the need. I was actually drawn to it, but I failed every single pre-med class I took, and ultimately had to drop all of my pre-med classes because I was failing. And my parents were, I remember calling them and saying, I was taking 18 credits at the time. I said, I need to drop 12 of them because I'm failing every class. I was studying 12 hours a day and failing. And my parents were like, we didn't want to tell you this, but nobody wants to go to a doctor that's getting D's and E's. So yeah. But I thought about it for a minute, but our dad always had his own practice. I mean, he always had a practice. Jeff, I meant to call you yesterday and tell you this, but a woman called me yesterday who listened to one of my, an interview I had with Scott Owens, who's the associate that bought my dad's practice, our dad's practice. And she called me and said that 41 plus years ago, she went to my dad right out of the Air Force. And she told me story after story after story. But one of the things the story that really resonated with me is her name was Val. She said, I fell down. She was in really, really bad shape. She fell in the cement, blah, blah, blah. It was a very long and very expensive procedures that my dad had to do. And she said, I don't have the money. And my dad said to her, just pay when you can. And that was kind of the entrepreneur, the way that my dad kind of ran. He never turned patients away. His patients loved him. And so I read a ton. I listen to a lot of books. I do this. But our dad really kind of ran a business and had a following of people who not only worked with him for 30, 40 years, but also followed him. And not to impress you on this or impress anyone, this is not a braggadocious comment, but our dad was not somebody who was involved in he was involved in kind of dental fraternities, but not really involved in much. And at his funeral, he had, what did he have? Like 1,500 or 2,000 people. It was like the second most crowded funeral they had ever had. And it was so many of his patients of lives he had touched through 40 years. And so that's just kind of like, so we grew up with this entrepreneurial dentist of a father who read all the books and listened to the tapes and kind of just through, and didn't talk about it ever really much, but just through his actions we watched.
Jeff, as you're the older brother, are there any other Dwoskin children or just the two of you? Are there other siblings we need to know about?
Just us for the sake of this. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to know where that went. But Jeff, this is interesting because as Jon was saying here, look, you've got a very empathetic, thoughtful, self-made father in that type of business. As you guys approach your business, do you guys feel, as it relates to the customers that you have, your clients that you have, that you've brought some of that down to the next generation?
I think so. I mean, I think both of us are rooted in making sure we're always doing the right thing for the right people and never taking money for money's sake. And, just always making sure that what we have to offer somebody is the right thing and that they're using whatever service we have the way it's meant and will be the most effective for them.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the core things. Yeah.
And I can speak on that too. Lou, I started my coaching is really the majority of my business is one-on-one coaching. I do, keynotes and trainings and things of that nature, virtual now. It's moving, back into that. But in December of 2020, I started a private coaching group. And the reason I did it, it was influenced by my father never turning a patient away, because there's story after story of my dad saying, pay me $5 a month, pay me $20 a month, et cetera. That, and so for me, my coaching is higher end. And I never like when people say to me, I can't afford that, or, it's not in my budget, or this and the other. And so the way I set up my business was completely influenced by that, because I provide content every day for free on my website and all social platforms. So if people can't afford anything, they have that. My one-on-one direct access is a higher ticket item. And then my coaching group is $50 a month. And then I have 3 more coaching groups that I'm doing with partners. Those are $100 a month. Right. But they're all influenced. So when somebody calls me and says, can I do this? They can never say, I can't afford you now. Because now I have an option where they can go for free, or they can do for $50 to $100 a month in a private coaching, live coaching with me. And that is 100% influence, the whole core of that, through the way my dad ran his business.
I was going to ask, is there hashtag services that are, for free options each month? I'm not going to ask Jeff that question. As it relates.
Well, I do have an answer for that, actually. One of the core tenets of what we built hashtag Stampede on was an original concept called hashtag Roundup, which is a Twitter property and an app that I built. And so I built this app for free because when I was, I gave it away for free. And when I'm a stand-up comedian, so I've been doing stand-up comedy for 18 years. And one of the things I noticed was how great Twitter was to get your voice out there. And one of the ways I realized it was easy to do that was through these concepts of hashtag games, not hashtags per se, like hashtag food, but like literal call and response. Things that when you read it, you know how to respond to it. Marriage in 4 words, or food movies, puns and stuff like that. Things that can bring out creativity in people, but give them a premise to work on. Because I found that when I started out that most people want to do social media, but they don't know how to do it or what to type beyond what they just ate for breakfast. So we kind of developed this thing, and my wife and I have been running it for now over 5 years. It's totally free. And I mean, sometimes brands pay to do something with us specifically, but 24 hours a day, every day of the week, you can play these hashtag games and really build up your social value on Twitter and download our app and all that kind of stuff. And that's all free. It's something that we kind of give and have built up and kind of fostered this community over the years.
Spectacular. You talked about getting your voice out there. Let's talk about getting your voice out there. Both of you host podcast programs. More than one for some of you, I guess, because there's a lot of content going on. Let's work back here. Jeff, I'm going to start with you, Jeff, and we'll ping it back to Jon. Live from Detroit, what's this program about?
Live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Show. It's sort of a variety show. It's what is someone called? I guess the nicest thing everyone's ever said is like, oh, it's like local. You're a local access David Letterman. That's what someone said to me. So I years ago, and this was all inspired by Jon, by the way, is Jon was podcasting and doing all that kind of stuff. I was on stage doing comedy, and he was took the smarter route of creating digital content years ago. And so years ago, I was starting a podcast. He convinced me to start one in like 2017. I bought everything. It was going to be based on social media. It was going to be called Viral Intentions, which was a kind of a twist of the movie Cruel Intentions, but, going viral, how to go viral, how to, get your voice out there. And so it sat on my desk. My wife screamed at me, ended up in a box. The pandemic hits. I can't find the box. I finally pull out the box. Jon can relate to this. I have no idea what wire goes where. I had to literally have a guy come in from Chicago to put everything back together. And so it's now March in the pandemic. And, people are at home, people are starting to get sick, hospitals dying. And I realize I'm about to start my podcast again. And I realize I can't restart a podcast called Viral Intentions.
Very true. Okay. That wouldn't work so well. Good point.
So I was talking to Jon. He's like, just do what you do and like just name it after you and all that kind of stuff and just have fun with it. So I do social media tips, but more like the idea of here's something you should be aware of, go Google it. You know what I mean? So and that kind of thing. And I love Comic-Cons and entertainment and pop culture. And so like you can't see my wall, but like it's all like 8x10 autographs. And I love meeting like celebrities from shows I grew up on and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I turned my podcast into. It's a little social media tips. I do some shtick, some bits up front, and then I interview someone. Like my most recent interview was Burt Ward, Robin from the 1966 movie show Batman. Cool. And so that was cool. And then my next one is Jack O'Halloran, who was Non and Superman. He was a big, broody, bad guy, from Krypton. And so, but that's the kind of thing. And then being a comedian, I have comedians that I talk to as well. So we talk comedy and kind of talk shop. So it's kind of like a whole thing of that. And I just had my 50th episode, which is cool.
Spectacular.
And, so I just have a good time with it. So mine's more comedy. John's more business.
Yeah. So, and Jon, we've talked about your show before, but bring our listeners up to speed as to what's going on with that. Yeah. As my dog is making a lot of noise in the background.
Yeah,
hold on,
my
keep
dogs
going.
will start barking once they hear your dogs. So mine is a business podcast. I mean, I two other podcasts that I have that I've retired was one I did just when I launched my book a few years ago. That was just kind of a very isolated podcast to support my book. I did a sales podcast called the 7-Minute Sales Minute for about 5 years with my buddy Fish. And that was just something we did for fun. We did about 130 episodes and then we just felt like it had kind of like taken its course. But my Think Business podcast, which is, that all originated launching my book, which is how I actually met you through Doug Sandler. I was interviewed on Doug Sandler's Nice Guys podcast, and he really talked to me about, doing this new podcast, which came out with Think Business. And I was doing about three podcasts a week, 2 podcasts and 1 kind of Q&A. And then when COVID hit, I'd been building content for it. I moved it to a 7-day-a-week podcast when COVID hit. And then on top of that, I was doing about 8 or 9 live shows a week. And I took it from about 200 episodes I have about 200 overall podcast episodes, which was about a year ago. And now come June of this year, I'll be over 1,000.
Oh, wow.
So crazy. I really have been and I love it. I love it. I love, I have a couple recordings left. I'm going to kind of wean down on the recordings and really only do lives. It just fits into my schedule a little bit more effectively. I like the process of doing the lives, and I go live every Monday through Friday and at noon. And
I get the alerts in LinkedIn. They pop across my thing. Here he is, Jon Dwoskin is live. Go check him out. I'm usually having coffee at that.
Oh, good. And I interview business people of all types, of all shapes and sizes, of very, cool and interesting businesses, or people who are doing things just on any level that I think somebody can learn from.
I was on Jon's podcast. I think it must have been a year ago.
Why would he have let you on is the question.
It must have been a year ago because one, I know I had some rocking COVID hair going. And then, but it was literally, I think the weekend I launched my podcast.
Let's just talk about this medium. And Jeff, as a comic, I've actually had a lot of comedians, a lot of improv folks who host podcast shows come on Thrive Loud and talk about how it's one of the best ways for them to kind of craft and maybe even perfect a little of their material. Do you find that the frequency or the sense of having to record and capture what you say helps your comedy?
No, I mean, not like a bit that maybe I would do on stage, not me personally. I do use it though as sort of the first usually 5-6 minutes is just me. And then I would go into the interview. And then I always end with kind of reciting one of the hashtag games that I mentioned earlier. I find something that's themes with the show. But in the beginning, I usually kind of, I always make up a sponsor and I always kind of do this shtick, where, and then kind of just do my thing in the beginning. Sometimes I have bits, sometimes I don't. I do a social media tip. It all depends. Like for my 50th, I had a friend of mine. I have a bunch of friends that do celebrity voices. So I love to incorporate and show off other people when I can. And So he did like a ton of voices for me. So he just dumped a bunch. I wanted celebrities congratulating me on my 50th episode. So, in the beginning, I'm doing my thing and I keep pretending like I'm being distracted. And then I open the door, amazing sound effects. I do all my sound effect work. And then there's like, a party, and then like, Arnold Schwarzenegger's congratulating me and like a bunch of people. And then at the end of the episode, I go back into the party and there's more voices, congratulating me again. And so he did all, so that was fun, just things like that. And it kind of depends. If the guest inspires some kind of bit, I'll kind of think it's something like that. But, that's a little more free form.
Right.
And most people just are tuning in for the guests, but they have to deal with me for a little bit.
So both of you altered the way that you communicate to your audience as COVID hit. One Jeff undusting the podcast equipment that had been sitting there for several years, and Jon maximizing and just hitting frequency button. 1 year later, how much you guys are still doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
And how much has it helped your businesses, and how much has it maybe helped you through the pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was huge for my business. It kept me, this was my mindset, Lou, when the pandemic hit. I thought I have an opportunity now because I've been building content just coincidentally to go 7 days a week without doing lives. But now I have the opportunity to have the exact same newsroom as every place in the world. So I knew I had a very limited window where I could report out positive news. There was so much negativity with, and just so much hardship going on with COVID. I thought, okay, I can be one piece of news where we're not talking about anything other than how you can, shift your mindset, how you can grow your business. I had a lot of, through the year, which I weaned down this March, different series. So I had my Think Business, and then I had Think Wealth with a co-host. I had Think Mindset with a co-host. I had Think Virtual. I had all of these different mini series, like kind of special edition mini series, to give people all these different avenues of anything that they could possibly need to get through COVID to keep their business intact and growing. And it was great. And because it was live, it kind of infused the energy of something that was just real time, like no prep. I think I've shared this with you. I don't prep any questions. I just want to have an organic conversation with somebody as if, I'm meeting them for coffee, and I want the listener to feel the same way. And so it's been great. And for me personally, it's like, this hasn't changed. It's a mini master's class for me every single day. I'm a very auditory learner. So I learn through asking questions, which I think is one of my sweet spots. And I learn through listening to other people. And I'm always listening for the nuances of how they do things and how they do things differently. And then bringing that piece of them out, like kind of the soul of themselves out, for the listener, for me, for them. And for me, it's just been an amazing experience. I love it.
And Jeff, after you're glad you dusted off the equipment?
Yeah, because, the interesting thing about podcasting to me is, and I think I might get a little bit into the weeds more than Jon does with like editing and stuff like that. But like, to me,
I do no editing. Right.
Yeah. So like, to me, it's like the interesting thing about being on stage versus doing podcasting is, when you're on stage, you're doing it live and it's however it turns out. And when you're podcasting, you can manipulate it a bit and you can put out the version of it that you want to put out. And so I really enjoy doing that, and I did it. The podcasting thing was more of a sanity thing. It was a nice way to communicate with people while I was stuck at home, reconnect with people that I haven't connected with, that I hadn't talked to, a comedian I hadn't talked to in 10 years. But then was more than happy to, get online and talk to me, like stuff like, which might have been an awkward call, say, hey, remember me? You want to just talk? No, I don't. I have a podcast. Oh, when can I talk to you? That kind of thing. And so, but recently though, I've been speaking at Podfest conferences now, and I've been meeting different people. My podcast actually recently is kind of ramping up and taking off a little bit more than it was. So I could see it growing to a point where I could do something with it if I wanted to. It was never my intention, but but I always wanted it to be kind of just be there. And then I do a live show every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern called Crossing the Streams, where we just talk about TV shows and stuff like that. Cause I wanted to do something live as well that was just a little more free form and not have to worry. That's not a podcast that just lives on YouTube, but
Gotcha.
that's fun. And I can hang out with some of my friends too. So,
And play Ghostbuster games or whatever it might be. That's most applicable.
It is.
So I'm going to go different. Normally I'll ask a guest, when you're off your game, what you do to get back on it type of thing and how you can get back to thriving. But I have a better question.
That's a good question.
It is a good question. I've asked you it before, but I'm going a different way now. And that is, do your wives listen to your podcast?
No, my wife, I always laugh with my wife and my kids. Like, this was about a couple of years ago. I think Joanna's listened to like maybe 2 or 3 episodes. Because sometimes I interview kids or sometimes I interview just people that I think she would be interested in. But about 2 years ago, I said I was sitting with my son and I said, Jacob, I got to go write a blog. And he said to me, and I've been blogging for 6 years. He goes, you blog? And so then I went upstairs and I said, Joanna, Jacob just said to me, blah, 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 you blog? And my wife said to me, you blog? And so, but no, I always, Joanna, and nor my kids, they really don't listen unless it's like, maybe I'm interviewing somebody that they know. But I would say collectively, my family, my wife, my 2 kids have probably listened to max a total of 3 to 5 episodes.
And they were, and one of them was probably the one when you had Jeff on the show.
Right.
And what about you, Jeff, on your program?
So it's
That's a funny question, by the way. That is.
I know. Like the guy, I will say I've listened to John's podcast, but I won't ask him if he's listening to mine.
I've listened to
1,000 episodes.
I've listened to your podcast, but I do joke around real quickly with my family. I was like, oh, I interviewed this person. I'm sure you guys loved it. And they'll say, oh yeah, we loved that. We loved that episode.
So when I did stand-up comedy, my wife would come a lot. And it was like she could do my act. We always joked she could actually get up there and probably mock me and do my act. With the podcast, probably not so much. So here's a funny story. Occasionally she will, but here's a funny story. So I mentioned I had Burt Ward on just recently. Burt Ward, if you're a Batman fan, you should definitely listen to the episode because it's amazing. However, if you're also a pet owner, dog or cat, it's a must listen. Burt Ward has spent the last decades of his life running with his wife a dog rescue. He's saved over 15,000 Great Danes and large animals. And they actually developed a dog food that's non-GMO and actually is healthy for dogs. The conversation is about how he lives with 50 animals. He has this charity and this dog food, and his dogs now live because of the time he put into developing dog food that actually is good for animals and cats, like 2 to 3 times the lifespan of dogs' lifetime. So and he's talking about different ways you should. So I'm telling my wife, you gotta, because I interviewed him like a month and a half ago, right? And so I'm like, we got to do this with our dog, and she's like, right? So I'm like, we got to do this. We got to try this dog food. She's like, So next thing you know, she had to take this somewhere. She comes home. She goes, Jeff, I just listened to the Burt Ward interview. We've got to start raising the dog's bowl. We've got to get this dog food. I'm like, I told you this a month ago. She's like, I know, but I don't listen to you. But like, if
it makes you feel any better, both you guys any better, the joke is we'll go out with other couples with my wife, and they will have both the couples we've gone out with have listened to the show. We'll have a conversation about it, and then she'll go back and maybe catch up to that particular episode. It's never always. It's very random on what she chooses to listen to. It's one of the things. I
don't even think it's about whether your wife listens. What about your Facebook friends? The 2,000 some people that I've cultivated my life with. I can't even get a like on a podcast post. And then I put a pic.
You see, here's what I learned. I
put a picture of pie up. I get 100 likes.
First of all, as it relates to Facebook friends, my big joke with Facebook was, and I did this and I don't care about other people. If I go an entire year and the last communication I had in real life or virtual was them wishing me happy birthday 1 year to the date in Facebook, and that's the last communication I had with them, I've been unfriending those people because I don't need the Facebook world. But I want to make this clear, and this is something I learned around the time I first interviewed Jon on the podcast way back when. it's real important people know about the episodes, because as you know this, Jeff, in your world from social media, the awareness, Jon's episodes hitting on LinkedIn, I know they're on.
Right.
Because we're interfaced with it. It's actually equally, if not more important, that they know
Correct.
that episode with Burt Ward happened. As people just listen to it here, they're going to get to it when they can get to it.
Correct.
And that's way more important than, oh my God, I have this many listens to when this episode dropped.
100%.
I've been joking about this for a long time that, this episode right here, because everyone in Detroit is going to listen to this episode, we know, specifically, anyone related to the Dwoskin family. But the reality,
do think people will listen to it, higher probability of people listening to it because it's two brothers than if
Yes.
it's individual. Yeah.
Or anytime you make the content different. You just mentioned Burt Ward. There's a stat on Burt Ward, by the way. Until some TV evangelist had surpassed it, no one had said the word holy on television more than Burt Ward, because remember, he was like, holy cow, Batman, holy this Batman, when he was in that role. Just a random stat that they tracked on television. That being said.
Well, wait, I have something to add to what you said, though, because this is really important when it comes to people who are thinking about podcasting. One, I'm a big fan that everybody should have a podcast. Right. And it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of people that listen. So, your question, I don't care if Joanna listens to my podcast because she's not a potential client. She's just my wife. Right. So, but I think this is really important. And I was just talking to my buddy, Paul, on this, who owns a company called, he does social media videos, and he was sharing this actually with my coaching group. I had him come be a guest speaker. People do not read on the internet. They skim. People do not watch videos. They read captions more so.
That's right.
And so that's really important. So when I do lives, my lives have captions on them. So I don't pay attention to views. Jeff and I talk about this all the time. Like, I don't pay attention to numbers, views, stats. I never check them. And because I know that people are reading captions, they may not ever click on it.
That's right.
And so I think, to me, it's a quality game, not necessarily quantity.
I always look at it differently. I agree with what you're saying, and it's good to not be obsessed with it. And I wish I was not refreshing every 5 minutes. But
Jeff calls me with my
listeners.
my
this is
brother calls
Thanksgiving
me-
dinner at the Dwoskin house.
Yeah.
This is-
I'm like, John, you're number 7 in Honduras, and like
Jeff calls me with my stats. I was like, thank you very much.
But that's what he does. That's remember, that's his gig. His business is understanding how that data is correct. You're trying to think of the big picture and how to literally make people elevate to the next level. He's figuring out how to tactically do it. I see.
Correct. 100%.
I email John. I text John. I said, you're number 150 in the United States, actually 149 business in the US. He goes,
pretty good.
My team says I should wait till I'm 100. I said, John, there's 850,000 active podcasts in the world, and you're in the number 150. You don't wait till 100.
No.
You start bragging about 150 right this second.
My take is I like posting, in my defense, a number. I was 149 in the United States that day. But it's like when I launched my book, I was an Amazon bestseller. Well, I snapshotted it. I mean, I only think I was a bestseller for 3 hours, but I used it for 4 months. So I liked it. I gotta feel like it's like a real quantitative number.
It is a real
Because
quantitative
2 days
number.
later,
every number is, John, just to be clear, I know you're the big think guy. Every number is a quantitative number. I just want to be clear on that.
I mean, there's people that make a living going, I'm the number 1 comedy podcast. Yeah, in 2017 for 15 minutes.
But that's okay. Hey, that's all right. It's a
Yeah.
moment in time.
I was huge in France once.
And April 15th, I was in the top 150.
Just for the record, at Uzbekistan, we are the number 1 show in business. And if you're interested, yeah, but that's because there's a hacker that's been cracking into my site. So I want to. We're going to put all the admin stuff for both your shows, and we're not going to go through that. You guys have to say what it is, because we'll do a good job of doing that for you. I want to do the speed round of Fun Street here in a matter of time here before I kill my dog. I'm going to ask you something. The first thing that comes to your mind, I'm going to ping pong back and forth. I'm going to go John, Jeff, John, and go back and forth. First thing that comes to your mind, these are things that lift you up, motivate you, make you thrive. And I'll kill my dog in about a couple of minutes. Jon Dwoskin, a song you love to hear that pumps you up.
Eye of the Tiger, Survivor.
Jeff.
St. Elmo's Fire.
Ah, it's a good one.
Jeff, a favorite food that's not a dessert.
Steak.
Hamburger and fries.
Jon, a favorite dessert?
A favorite dessert, vanilla ice cream with caramel.
Jeff?
Strawberry and rhubarb pie.
Oh, that's a good one.
Jeff, an activity you wish you did more of?
I wish I golfed more.
Jon, an activity you wish you did more of?
You know what? I golf and tennis, but I'm overcommitting to do more of it.
Jon, an activity you wish you did less of?
Less. That's a hard one for me to answer because everything I don't like doing, I have a virtual assistant to do it for me.
Well, there you go.
You know, I have 8
Probably talking to your virtual assistant and telling her what to do.
Yeah.
Jeff, an activity you wish you did less of?
Look, I've been in the house since literally last March. I mean, I can't think of an activity. I would like to sit in that chair over there less. That's my. That's something I think I should do less of.
Jeff, if I snap my fingers and you could go anywhere in the world other than the chair across the room, where are you?
I'm Disney World every time.
Jon?
I'd go to Florence with my wife and my kids.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, I meant to mention my wife and kids would be with me as well.
I should say Florence, but just Italy. Just go to Italy. Yeah.
The last question. I'll go Jon first. Jon, something nice you can say about your brother.
Sure. You know, my brother is one of the smartest people I know. He understands stats and the internet and how people need to be thinking about how they utilize social media. My brother and I, we didn't talk about this. We had an internet company that we started together. I was right out of college. I was 23. He was 25. All of the ideas of the internet, the stuff that we created that is groundbreaking today, my brother was an idea guy who created all of it. And I went out and sold it, but his vision of what it was all him. And he continues to do it in all of his businesses. And he's awesome. He's a great brother, and he's just a good human being.
And Jeff, about Jon.
I'm not crying. You're crying. I admire Jon's confidence and passion to kind of always kind of just move forward and get things done. I feel that's something that I lack in, and so I don't want to say jealous of it, but I admire it in Jon and his ability to just kind of make things happen. So I mean, I think he's a great brother, and I love how close we've been and all the things that we've done together. And I thank our parents for always pushing us into that. But I like to think we kind of are always there for each other.
Yeah. And
we kind of motivate. We're kind of like, we're two different lanes, but going in the same direction always. We do different things, but not competing. I think it's always complementary and could merge at any time, and that kind of thing. So it's really nice.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, Lou, like the competition, the Thanksgiving. Like my brother and I have never competed with each other like that. Like we support each other. We have different skill sets that complement each other, and it's never been competitive like that.
Love it.
I guess I can say that because I'm kidding. I was going to say
we hope that their spouses get a chance to listen to this episode because here they are highlighting each other. Dwoskin Brothers, Jon and Jeff. Thanks so much for coming on Thrive Life.
Thanks, Lou.
Do what you're doing every day, man.
Thanks, Lou.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.